Get Pucked.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Vito, David, Matt here. Me being slightly touched under the weather, but we're going to trooper through it because the show must go on, right, boys?
Must.
So, yeah, must.
Warrior.
Must go on. So, there was some action. Finally, a trade occurred with the Habs. Obviously, it's with a guy that's been brought up multiple times. We were kind of talking the last few episodes where we're like, we don't see him moving mainly because of the very low production this year, lack of engagement, perhaps even just generally like a moper. And we're like, I don't know, this is probably a dude who will be like, picked up by a team in the offseason. But alas, here we are. Dallas Stars made a trade. They trade for Dadonov by trading over much younger Gurianov. And so we asked the question on Twitter the other day to just get a feeler for what the general sense of the fan base was kind of feeling. And now I want to ask you boys. Let's say Dadonov was going to move regardless. Are you happy with the return in Gurianov, or would you have preferred like a third round pick, which is what a lot of people were suggesting Hughes was going for? Dave?
I mean, you have to have something wrong with you if you'd prefer a third or a fourth round pick over a guy like Gurianov. Like, to me, this is a home run by Ken Hughes. We took a guy, Dadonov, who literally nobody had any expectations for whatsoever, right? They got him in the Weber deal. He came here, it was non-existent really. And, okay, you're going to flip him for a fifth, a fourth, maybe a third. Okay, maybe. And instead they go and get a guy who was, drafted 12th overall.
12th overall. Yep.
Just okay, maybe in 2015 it took some time to arrive. He arrived, put up a 20-goal season, scored 9 goals in the playoffs. 9. Yes, he had 1 4-goal game, but still 9 goals in the playoffs, including one to send them to the Stanley Cup final. And then, okay, he struggled a little bit. He struggled. He was playing with terrible players over there in Dallas for this season. He was with Luke Glendening, who's a terrible hockey player, well, NHL player, to say the least. Sorry, Luke Glendening fans and Detroit fans and Dallas fans, but he's not it. And Mason Marchment, who's decent, but like kind of the similar style of player. So to me, I think this is a really good move. I really enjoy watching Ken Hughes do his thing. I mean, there's zero risk, right? Like, Dadonov was leaving anyways. Who cares? And now you get this guy who has potential. Look, he's on the first line in practice. Like, how does that make it? Like, if you're a Dallas fan, you're kind of just worried, especially what they just went through with Nichushkin or in Colorado. It's just like this could be another that style of player like him that could turn it around on a new team. And especially, I think he'll fit well with this Habs core. He's 25 years old. Man, bring it on. I think this was an excellent, excellent deal. And if you're a Dallas fan, you're scratching your head here a little bit because you could have given him a little bit of more patience.
I mean, just to quickly jump in there before you go, Vito, I mean, number one, could you ever imagine under any of the previous regimes in the past recent memory that would have taken a guy like Gurianov through this trade and slapped them on the first line? Now, I understand there's a lot of injuries on the team right now, but isn't that just a breath of fresh air to see this? We didn't bring this guy over, plot him where Dadonov was on like the third line or whatever, and just kind of like, okay, kid, that's where you go. That's where the guy was that we traded you for, so you plug there. Like, to me, that was like, wow, they're really going to try to give this guy the best opportunity that he can get, which I don't think previous regimes would have done.
Yeah, and I love it. And Marty St. Louis had a good quote. He said something along the lines that, like, I like to judge for myself. I like to make the judgment for myself. I see the player I'm getting, and then I don't let his reputation speak for itself. I'll give him a chance here. And I think that's perfect. That's what he needs. I think that he needs. And now I'm not saying that Gurianov is going to turn into another 30-goal scorer, or 25-goal scorer, or even a 20-goal scorer on a consistent basis. It's just the potential is there. He's done it before. It's happened before. I absolutely think that this is a home run of a deal. I know it's silly to say because it might not end up to anything, but it's the perfect type of trade for any NHL organization.
Yeah, it's all upside. Vito, what do you think?
They got rid of the Dadonov that so many fans wanted out of Montreal. He was not playing very well for Montreal. They acquired a much younger player in Gurianov, who's also a former 12th overall pick. Now that draft is turning out to be quite an amazing draft. So my expectations for Gurianov is just that I don't expect him to be an everyday top 6 forward. I'm going to manage my expectations, but he can be a very decent player who's going to provide some secondary scoring for the Habs. And there's no risk here. They got a guy who they still have under their control, who's an RFA at the end of the season, whose qualifying offer is not that bad and is quite digestible for a guy that was leaving no matter what. At the end of the day, I find fantastic asset management there by Kent Hughes. They got rid of Shea Weber's contract, which was going to be on LTIR for Dadonov, and then eventually Dadonov played 50 plus games with the Habs, did nothing, and we managed to flip him for Gurianov. It's a great acquisition. It's honestly, even if he's not a 20 goal scorer, and he pots you 10 to 15 a year. It's still a great move considering that now you have a younger player who's 6'3", 200 plus pounds, can skate like the wind, and play a certain style, and he will now have the freedom to play his game. It was a down year in Dallas this year, but now he goes to a team where he has no pressure whatsoever, can play his game. Marty St. Louis is going to probably just let him do what he has to do in a sense and try to get him to take on or fall into the concepts, as Marty St. Louis has often said, of the Montreal Canadiens today.
Okay.
Sorry, just to cut in, his strength in entries, which is, like the Canadians have some terrible games where they can never, ever enter the zone properly. So, I mean, that's an upside as well. And it's just a guy, to me, like Jim Nill is a good general manager, but man, like you couldn't get someone better than Dadonov for Gurianov. There's no one else in the league trying.
Scored in his first game. There.
That was a nice goal too.
Okay, but like it's one of those deals again that on the face side it looks fine. Okay, good deal. But then you're like, man, like they're giving up Gurianov. Like they could have gotten something better than that. It just boggles my mind sometimes.
It's more fun stuff for GMs.
I think for Dadonov, I think maybe Jim Nill was influenced by Peter DeBoer. He's coached them in the past. Maybe he felt like he could hone some of that goal scoring that he had with him when he was in Florida. Maybe something to that effect. And that's maybe what Jim Nill said. Okay, fine.
There's a connection there.
Let's move Gurianov there just in case. He's not fitting in with the Stars right now. We're going to try to make a push. Everybody's getting better. We need to do something now. Does Dadonov make them better? I don't think so. But at the same time, who knows when you're playing with the likes of the Jamie Benn and Robertson and Seguin and so on. So maybe he gets a bit of life into him and can. He's more. He was doing with the Habs.
He's more invigorated for sure, right? I think one of the best things I saw was somebody write something to the effect of on that goal that he scored in his first game there with Dallas. He put more like power into his stride, and he was more explosive in that one play than he was in all 50 whatever games he played for the Canadiens. I mean, you made a comment before, Vito, which I thought was funny. You're like, a lot of fans wanted him out. I don't think anybody wanted Dadonov out of Montreal more than Dadonov. This guy, the second he got here, the second he put on that jersey, I don't think he smiled maybe once. Like, it's not a fit. Some players it just doesn't work out right from the offset. He had that little history where that deal was to send him to Anaheim, but he had it on his axe list. I mean, players are allowed to have teams they don't want to go to.
Think about when he got to Montreal, right? Montreal was completely healthy. They had so many players on the wing. He was popped onto the fourth line. So it was. I mean, I can understand it's not something exciting.
It's just,
he's the type of player that can't be on your fourth line. He just can't. He's not built to be a fourth line player. But at the same time, I would even question: does he have the skill to be an everyday top six? And while he has scored 20 goals with past teams, with Montreal, it's like you said, maybe he didn't want to be there. Maybe from the get-go, he was like, okay, I'm here because of a trade, not because I want to be here willingly. So,
I mean, he never seemed like he had the engagement with the team. So, I mean, listen, all the best to him over in Dallas. What I'm more curious about, and this is actually rather recent, and it kind of made me want to ask you guys this question. Puljujarvi just got traded, and this, as of us recording it, this happened maybe 25 minutes ago. So the whole Puljujarvi thing in Edmonton is finally over. They trade him to Carolina. I was just curious, like with all the connections and all the rumors about Montreal and Edmonton working something out, maybe for Edmundson before he was all injured, and Puljujarvi and a pick coming back. It was always Puljujarvi and then something. Would you prefer having Gurianov on your team or Puljujarvi?
Gurianov, I would say. Gurianov because, and I'm going to base this on this. I think Gurianov seems to do well under pressure. You know, at the World Juniors in the semifinal, he put up 2 goals against the U.S. You saw his playoff performance against Calgary, against Vegas. He got, he scored goals and he was able to perform. I think that factors in. Puljujarvi, I mean, he's the type of player that I think wouldn't do well in Montreal. He would have maybe folded a little bit on the pressure and on himself. I'm actually when they were discussing, when you heard the rumors of that, I just don't think it ever was really a good fit. I'm willing to take a flyer on a guy like that for sure, especially if you get him for cheap. But I'm not too disappointed that the Canadiens didn't end up with him.
Cool.
If you put aside the fact that he was drafted the 3rd overall, I would probably go with Gurianov as well. When you think of Gurianov in that sense, it's like, okay, I like what Dave said. He could handle the pressure a little more in Montreal probably than Puljujarvi. Puljujarvi, I find it's going to take a lot more time to work on to build his confidence back versus Gurianov. I don't think Gurianov was a confidence issue per se. I just think he was a guy having a down year and just fell down in the depth chart of the Dallas Stars right now. As for Puljujarvi, I mean, he was playing with he's played with McDavid, he's played with Draisaitl, he's played with Bruce Hopkins, he's played with everybody on the Edmonton Oilers, and it was always the same issues. You have these flashes where he's starting to produce, and then one little hiccup and he's back in his funk again. I do think that Carolina could be a very good fit for Puljujarvi, mainly because there's a connection there with Aho and Finland. They did well together. They showed some chemistry in the past, but I agree with Dave. I don't think he would have been a good fit for Montreal. And again, most people are going to be like, what are you talking about? As a former 3rd overall pick. Yeah, well, there was a lot of former 3rd overall picks that didn't pan out for other teams, including Montreal.
No more so than Montreal, right? Let's not go through that list. But I mean, it does bring up an interesting question from the Edmonton perspective. I mean, they cleared out all $3 million or $3.5 million to Puljujarvi's cap, which I think most people are a little bit surprised about, that they were able to not have to retain money on this move. So they now have a little bit of money, a little bit of cap space, and everybody who's watching this team knows they need defense, help on defense, no matter what. And there's a lot of names out there. There's Ekholm in Nashville. Apparently, they're very interested in. Chychrun is always coming up. There was the Carlson thing for a bit, but apparently that fell through. So let's talk about our man Eddie, right? And I know that there's been recently this thing that came out from the NHL, which I thought was hilarious, about there'll be severe sort of repercussions or something about trading players who are injured. And Arvind Basu wrote something hilarious that the NHL, it's so on point for them to release a statement that they're going to enforce one of their own rules, which I thought was very, very funny.
I'm guessing unless it's the Arizona Coyotes, right?
Well, we don't talk about
money laundering you want on that one. Is that
we don't talk about Arizona. But point in fact, so Puljujarvi was always the one that was linked with a pick, usually. That was the consistent sort of trade package that would come back from Edmonton if they were to go and acquire Joel Edmundson. Now that Puljujarvi is gone, do you guys have anything off the top of your heads that would make sense in terms of like a trade deal between Edmonton and Montreal? They have some pretty good prospects in the cupboard. I don't know if they'd be willing to part with them. They still have their first, which I'd imagine would be part of it, probably. What do you guys think? What's Ken Holland prepared to do?
Not trade his first.
I think the odds of them making an Edmundson deal with Edmonton went out the window with Puljujarvi going out. That's just a sense I get. Like, I think it was going to be Puljujarvi and like a mid pick, and that's it. That's what you're going to get for Edmundson this year. And now that he's gone, I don't think they're willing to part with top prospects. I mean, especially not with the quality. I mean, you laid it out there, Chychrun. Apparently, they're working really hard to get Jacob Chychrun as we speak. That's a guy you give up prospects for. That's a guy you give up a first-round pick for. That's a guy that makes more sense than a guy like Joel Edmundson. I know you're going to push for a cup run. He's great in the playoffs, but he has so many question marks surrounding him in terms of his health. And not only that, but like he's not that much of an impact player. I don't care what anybody says. You're not going to convince me of it. And it's just, to me, you're not going to get much more than maybe a second-round pick now. And again, maybe I'm wrong because, but if I was a NHL general manager, I would not give him more than a second-round pick for Joel Edmundson. So I think the odds of him getting traded actually went down.
Okay. No, I think there'll be a team that's going to overpay. If they can see that Joel Edmundson can play this week.
sorry, I meant with Edmonton.
Yeah, okay, with Edmonton. Okay, so even Edmonton, Dave, you're not wrong. The only thing I would say when it comes to Edmonton is that they do need
But-
the defenseman to stabilize that back end a little bit. So, I mean, that's what they're really, really lacking. And I find Edmundson can be somebody, provided he's healthy, to stabilize that back end because they can't expect McDavid to score 4 or 5 goals a game or 3 goals a game to keep them in it because the defense can't hold up. And
That's exactly what they expect of him.
Not anymore. Not when you look at the other
5-point game and he loses. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
It's crazy.
They need to trade away some assets and take advantage of the fact and take advantage of this window of having McDavid and Draisaitl there at the age that they're at. Because you know what? McDavid's 26 years old and Draisaitl's 27 years old. And while they're going to be good for a very long time, right now they're losing time for multiple cup runs rather than just getting the one cup. These are guys that should, at this point in their careers, in my opinion, be going on to their second cup at the very least. And they bring in that help right now. Get them to the point where the defense can support them. If you want to get a puck mover and trade some assets away like a Jacob Chikrin, go right ahead. But just because you acquired Chikrin doesn't mean you can't go get an Edmundson or even the other rumored players, Ekholm, but apparently the demand is 2 first-round picks for him. So, yeah, they should trade for Edmundson. Maybe it's not a first-round pick. Likely not going to be Holloway or Bourgeau, but find something that works.
So can I just confirm you're suggesting that McDavid and Draisaitl should be moving on to cup number 2, and the only reason why that hasn't occurred yet is because they do not have a Joel Edmundson. No. Is that what I'm understanding?
They don't have
that clip.
I love how you spin it this way.
That's what I heard.
I can't believe you spin it that way.
Oilers and Joel Edmundson away from multiple cups.
They're a couple of defensive defensemen away from being able to help them out at least.
Maybe a goaltender would be nice
and
too.
A goalie,
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I did mention that Jack Campbell's been,
on
the ball there.
Bring back Mike Smith. Get him off IR.
But I mean, they need to stabilize that defense. It's been a problem for a while, especially when the day that they lost Klefbom for as long as they did, and they know that he's out probably for the rest of his career, or at least for a very long time. They should have started looking and say, okay, we can't just have this glaring hole on our roster. Like, let's go get some defensemen. Let's do something. We need some defense. It can't just be McDavid skating through the entire opposing team, scoring 5 points and still losing, and then he goes from cheering. And then all of a sudden, he's sulky. And you have to hear him say it was an embarrassing start and an embarrassing finish.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I think they got a lot of things they need to do to get that team. I mean, all the Western Conference teams, for that matter, this year in particular, need to do something. I mean, everybody's talking about how the East Coast teams have all gone through this arms race, and they're like loading up left, right, and center between the New Jerseys and the New York Rangers, Boston. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know what they're waiting for. I know they're 3 hours behind the East, but this is a little bit ridiculous at this point. Like, come on, guys.
You and I went through this exercise the other day. The only team that's a little bit intimidating on the West side, we're talking the East. A few years ago, the West Coast was like, okay, they're the conference that we have to worry about. They're big, they're strong, they're physical, they're built for the playoffs, all of that stuff. It's shifted. The East now has most of the talent now. Not to say that there isn't any talent in the West, but it's the East is a conference to watch out for. The West side, the only team that you look at on paper and you're like, okay, they could still cause some damage as long as they're all healthy, is Colorado. Nobody else on the West scares me in any way.
I mean, look, you know what the West is going to benefit from is that the East are going to beat the crap out of each other heading into that.
They're going to eat themselves.
And then whoever gets to the Stanley Cup final from the West probably will have an easier time than we think, and I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked if the Cup winner is from the Western Conference, just because of that. I mean, the East is a beast. The Leafs, the Bruins, the Lightning. Take Carolina. Your pick. The Rangers, Carolina. You have all of
Jersey, New Jersey. New Jersey going to be good for a long time.
And half of those teams won't get out of the second round. Won't get into the second round. Yeah, that's the craziest thing about this. That you got the best teams in the league, and that come round 2, half of them are going to be gone because they're all in the same conference. It's pretty wild stuff. Yeah, it's
nuts. But that's what the Western Conference is going to. I could see a team like Vegas, kind of just stroll, or even a team like just look at anywhere. Like for sure, Colorado is there, but I mean, any of those teams could come in, and one team is going to get out of the Western Conference, and then they're going to do that damage, I think.
The cup is coming back to the East.
Okay.
Smart
I'm
money
calling.
says so, but crazier things have happened. I mean, you just kind of gotta, like Dave's suggesting. I mean, it's an interesting point of view. I mean, given the fact that the East has all the big hitters and they're all going to go at each other right away, the Western Conference a little bit softer. Team that gets there might be a little bit less tested, got more guys that are less hurt, less banged up. Goalie gets hot. I mean, things can happen, but I mean, right now, if you were to ask me, do I think it'll be East or West? I gotta put the money on the East. The teams are just too loaded up. Which East team though? I don't know, but yeah.
And one thing that's interesting about the Oilers, again, I'll give him this, okay? Like last year, they were never going to win the cup with Mike Smith. I don't care. I could have fought you guys for the rest of my life. It would have never happened. I know they got the Western Conference final. It would have never, ever, ever won with Mike Smith. But Jack Campbell has the ability to get hot. We've seen it with the Leafs. He played for about like 16 games. He played for that Vezina caliber, and even this year he had some. Well, not so much this year, but he has that potential, and that's something that if he gets hot at the right time. I mean, Edmonton could do some damage potentially, especially if they shore up that back end.
Okay, you're not wrong, but again, Jack Campbell, he's like both ends of the spectrum, right? Like he could either get really hot or just be, as you've been seeing him all season, super ice cold, and then he starts to get into his own head and he just can't play. And that's one of the reasons why I think Toronto moved on from him and we're willing to pay $5+ million long term for Jack Campbell. It's just, but you're not wrong. But technically, any goalie who's got a bit of talent in the NHL can go on a heater. Again, Edmonton needs the goalies in Edmonton need a few defensemen in front of them to help them out.
That's fair.
I don't disagree. I do want to pivot to another thing quick though. There's been a lot of big trades that have already happened. Like probably the biggest names on the list are already sort of moved on. Do you guys prefer that, let's say the 2, maybe 3 weeks leading up to trade deadline, these big trades are trickling in here and there, and it's like one day you get a big trade, a couple days go by, another big one, spatter a few little ones in there? Or would you prefer like mostly radio silence until trade deadline and then that whole day is nuts? What's your preference? I'm curious. A lot of people on Twitter are talking about this, and I was like thinking about this myself. What would I prefer?
It's a great topic because as a kid, there was nothing better. I think when I was in high school, there was nothing better than going to your school computer, just refreshing all the time to see what deals made. Oh man, I remember at the time it was like Doug Gilmour got traded. Like, oh my god, crazy! Like it's just that's what it's all about when you want to see everything. But now that I'm an adult and I could be a bit more patient. I like these deals. I like the way it is now. I like the way it is now because you're never without anything, and you have the kind of anything can happen at any time. You're not just like
more digestible.
Wait till Friday and let's see what happens. And then teams are rushed or handcuffed or this or that. You don't know. I like it better this way. I think it's kind of silly to ever wait for the trade deadline to do anything like that, unless you're a seller and you really have a bidding war going on. I don't think there's any purpose. And you could get injured. There's a million things that could go wrong. Just get it done. If you have a deal in place, get it done. Shop it around. If you can't get anything better, you won't get anything better. Just do it then. So I like these deals. Like I like that today. Hey, we got to move here. Okay, what's going on with Chickler? Maybe he'll get moved to Patrick Kane. Everyone. Oh, on Sunday he's going to be a New York Ranger. Like, you know what I mean? Like it didn't happen. Yeah, it didn't happen. But these are exciting things that it's a storyline. You can get more involved into it instead of just like 75 trades on trade deadline day. Sorry to James Dutton. That's
so exciting though. Like when you have like 75 trades that happen, it's like one after another, and you're just like, oh my god, this person got moved. Oh my god.
But sorry to cut you off. But like what happens? Sometimes I would be working at TSN back in the day when like the Vanek deals went through and stuff like that for the Habs, and like then like the next day you're like, oh, I forgot this happened, or you're watching a game like 3 days later and you're like, oh man, this is a big move. I didn't even know it happened. It got lost in the shuffle. You know what I mean? It's boring. Not okay,
boring. But how excited were you when it was that time when the Habs, Gomez, Jonta, and all of them started coming into the roster on one shot, right? That was like one of the most exciting times as a Habs fan.
That was a free agency, I think.
I understand. but it was still like, you know what I mean? It was all in one cluster. So that same level of excitement could happen at the trade deadline on that one day. And you're just like, holy crap, my whole team just got overhauled in like 4 minutes. Now it built up to that. In reality, it really did build up to that. But it felt like everything happened in 4 minutes as a fan who's watching all of this. And it's just like, holy shit. Screw it. Holy shit, like, look at all of this, right?
There's that crazy, a couple years ago, the craziest 14 minutes in hockey when it was the Weber Subban and then Adam Larson and Taylor Hall.
Obviously, had to happen on the same day.
Like minutes from each other. It was wild. You didn't know which one you wanted to talk about first. That was.
And then
I don't know.
Stamkos re-signed as well during that day.
And Stamkos, yes, Stamkos was going to go to Toronto, all that, and then he re-signs for the rest, basically, of his career. Yeah, I'm on the fence, man. I don't know. As a hockey fan, I like to consume hockey information as it's coming all the time. It's fun, but there is something about it. Like to Vito's point, it's kind of like a Christmas morning kind of thing. You get there, you're pumped, you're excited, and then all the presents start. All the trades are going on. All the things are happening. Oh, it's 5 o'clock. There's still trades on the pipeline. The fax didn't go through yet. Things like this. I don't know. I can see both sides.
Everybody's spreading so many rumors and throwing out so many things to try to be first, and most of it doesn't make sense. And it's like you're looking, and it's like, okay, I get both sides. Like, here's a bit of information. Oh, you got to trade. You could talk about it for a couple of days before the deadline happens. Things could still. It's like the anticipation of things could still happen from now till the 3rd is one thing, but everything you take. Some people would take the day off on trade deadline or some people would call in sick and they'd be there the whole time, refreshing, watching TSN or whatever. Media outlet out there, it's just to see, okay, which person got traded, and James Duthie actually had a job rather than us seeing those antics that are happening on TSN. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. I can see both sides, but I can't remember the last time I got that excited for a trade deadline versus when I was younger, and you take that sick day from school just to watch the trade deadline. Now everything's happening. It's like now we're questioning what is there left to happen from now till the 3rd. Like, who's still left? Okay, we have Kate.
Now it's the bottom tier. Now it's tier B.
Well, now most people are crossing the fingers, hoping that some random surprise trade that most insiders didn't know or hear about, or didn't get any words on throughout the entire year just happens. The most recent rumor that came out is that the Penguins have actually checked in on JT Miller, and you're just like, oh, okay, that came out of nowhere. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. But now will it happen? I'd rather I don't know. I'd rather be that person that you have like 4 hours to get it done on trade deadline day because the buzz is gonna go off at 3 o'clock. Let's do it. Let's see what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
that's agree. Me. I don't know if I sold you guys on it, but
didn't have to sell me. I was already there with you. Again, I can see both sides. Both are fun. I'm still going to be plugged in like crazy. Maybe not to the whole day with James Duthie and everything going on there with the craziness that they do on those days to fill the time. But I'll be refreshing Twitter.
The T-shirt gun a couple of years ago.
It was Marty Biro and I forget who. Else. So someone else.
Jennifer Hedger or whatever. She got shot with the.
Yes, it was.
She got shot with the T-shirt gun in the gut. I'm like, all right, that's fun. I mean, it was all an accident, but that was fun.
Yeah, this is the hard-hitting hockey kind of related stuff that I'm looking for on trade deadline.
Oh, yeah.
But listen, it's a couple days away. It's as of recording today, I think we're 4 days away. It's this upcoming Friday. I'm sure lots of things are going to happen between now and then. Stay plugged in to obviously to Twitter, everybody, as I'm sure you all are. Give us a little check also, if you don't mind. We'll be commenting on all the major trades that be coming out between now and then, and of course on trade deadline, obviously. And that would be it for this episode, everyone. So thank you so much for taking the time, listening to us. If you made it all the way through, we really appreciate you. As always, like, subscribe if you do like. Please drop a subscribe so you can get notified on when the next episode is going to be releasing. We're diving a little bit into doing shorts as well. Vito's been at the helm of that one. They've been pretty great. So take a look at those as well. And on behalf of Vito and Dave, I'm Matt, and this was Get Pucked.